Looks like we can go ahead and get started.
I don't know, I just see this. Yes, please.
And we'll call to order the Brainerd Park Board meeting at City Hall, 501 Laurel Street, Council Chambers, Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022, and it is 4 p.m. Kim, if you want to do roll call.
Tim Boder, Kara Schaefer. Yes. Andrew Scheib,
Here.
Kevin Yeager.
Yes.
Troy Rushmeyer.
Yes. And we will say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
We have looking for approval of the agenda, but before we do that, is there any other items that anyone has that they'd like to add to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I would like to add, if I could, discussion of the 2023 park agenda, budget to the agenda, please.
Jesse, is that okay to go towards the end, or? Okay.
Yes, that'll be fine.
Okay. Yeah, Jennifer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And maybe it would be appropriate to add an introduction of Jesse Dean to the Park Board, wherever you see fit, Mr. Chair.
Maybe we better do that at the beginning instead of the end, huh?
Sounds good.
I have something to add too also. Just a real quick discussion on our next date for our master planning, setting a master planning date for us within the group.
Is that okay? I think maybe if we could put all of these before the park maintenance report and the recreation report, is that okay with everyone?
Works for me.
In that order. And I believe we have Diane here, was wanting to speak during the open forum. Would anyone be against doing that at the beginning of the meeting so as to not to have you stick around through the whole meeting before we do that? Would you be okay with that? Certainly. Everyone else?
Yeah, works for me. That's great.
Okay. Maybe before we start that, if we could do an introduction for Jesse here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Park Board. I am happy to introduce to you Jesse Dean is our new Public Works Director, City Engineer. Comes to us from the City of Marshall, and maybe he can give you a little bit of background. He is on week number 4. Oh, time's going so fast. On week number 4, and really has done a great job of jumping in, really taking a look at our parks, looking at our park budgets in addition to streets. Transit has had a retirement, so he has just hit the ground running, and we are so happy to have him on board. So with that, Mr. Chair, Jesse Dean.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I apologize. I want to shake your hand, but my kids were nice enough to give me a head cold over the weekend, so I'm trying to keep that to myself as much as I can. Like Jennifer mentioned, I came here from the City of Marshall as their Assistant City Engineer. I've been working for pretty much government ever since I got out of school, so I'm pretty happy with where I'm at with working for the government, and I'm really blessed to be here with the City of Brainerd. We have family in the area, and the Princeton area, Merrifield area, so we're really happy to be around here and see what we can do for the city.
Yeah. Welcome, awesome. And I get it. I would wear a mask too the first month in case you decide, I don't want these people to know me in case I leave after a month. So good plan on that one. No, very, very welcome. Nice to meet you. And before, Diane, we start, we'll go through the consent calendar. Notice to the public, all matters listed are considered routine by the board and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless good cause is shown prior to the time the board votes on the motion. So with that, if we could get a motion to approve the agenda.
So move, Yeager.
Calendar.
Second, Shape.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Yes.
Motion and approval of the agenda with those additions and the changes.
I'll make that motion as well.
I'll second that.
It's Kim. Okay. What was yours, Kevin?
Mine was the master planning discussion. Just a continuation of that.
Reboot?
We will put those at the end of the new business then, I'm assuming?
Yes.
And removing public forum to number 6.
It's a madhouse in here today.
I knew I should have stayed away one more month. But anyway, Diane, would you like to come forward?
Did we actually approve the agenda?
Oh, we didn't.
Yes, I said approval of the agenda and a notice
Yeah, I think we got
and
it.
a consent calendar, I
Perfect.
believe.
Sorry. Yep.
Okay, all right.
So how does this work? I state my name and...
Name and address, and then,
Okay, my name is Deanne Barry. My address is 18610 Smith Road, Brainerd. I'm the director of the center located at 803 Kingwood Street. I'm here to request placement on the September agenda, a discussion in regard to parking at Gregory Park, within the park. So,
and we can do that. We can certainly add that to the agenda. Do you want to get a little more specific, like during events? Are you asking that for vehicles to be allowed to stay?
the
Inside the
history, the center organized renovations to the bandstand in Gregory Park. In Brainerd's history, we had 5. We have 1 bandstand left. So 12 years ago, we wanted to give back to the city of Brainerd. We renovated, collected, fundraised, and did $53,000 of renovations to the bandstand in Gregory Park. Once those were done, mid-June, we started weekly, Thursday evening, 7 o'clock, free to the community bandstand concerts. And for 12 years, we have continued to do so. So that's the history behind it, and there seems to be, I would like a resolution as far as what that means, as far as performers, bands, being able to park within the park while they are playing on Thursday nights.
Okay.
Clarification, resolution, all of that. And before we start planning for next year. And the last one, if you've never been to one, they're really fun, especially if the weather is good and we can have them outdoors. The rain site is the center at 803 Kingwood Street, so usually, I'd like to say they've never been canceled, but in 12 years, we've canceled twice. One was this year when the weather was not supposed to be rainy, but it was. So we always hold them, and it's really fun. It's a beautiful park to be outdoors. It's a great venue for having performances, and it's free for the community to attend. Please, yes. 7? Yep, okay.
Deanne, if I could just add, would you be able to send like a bullet list of some of those topics that you'd want to discuss, just to kind of move things along at that meeting, and anything that you would want to add to those? I think there were some issues at one of these events last month or in June or something, wasn't there?
It's been a couple.
Okay, and then could you list that as well, and, we could discuss those issues, and anyone else have any concerns with adding this to the agenda in September?
Oh, that's great.
Okay,
Yeah. I just want to understand what incidents or issues there have been so we can kind of focus our understanding on what's brought this up now after 12 years.
So you want me to explain that when I send documentation in?
Yep, that would be great. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you, and thanks for having Kim. She was wonderful to work with. Thank you.
thanks, Deanne. Okay.
Anybody else for forum? We're in forum right now.
In open forum right now, yep. Yeah, are there any other open forum? Anything online that we know of? Okay. I think we can move out of that. The first item I believe it's gonna be you, WSB. City Engineer, Director Dean. Is that right, Jesse? Is it Dean or Den?
Dean, that's correct, yep.
With the monthly update memo for MLT Park.
Yes, sir. So just to go through a little bit of the work that's already kind of been done. So most of the removals have been completed, as well as some of the grading. If you've been out there, you've seen a lot of the concrete that's been placed, so a lot of slabs. A lot of the foundational items have been placed, especially for the overlooks. The utilities generally are in place, with the exception of a lot of the storm sewer has got to be finished up yet. And then some of the blocking for the retaining wall, the tiered seating has been placed. I know they're still working, I believe, on the overlook area up on top. And then the playground ring has been done. I'm sure within the next month, you'll start seeing a lot more structure go up from the ground. Like I said, most of the slabs and stuff is kind of done at this point. So between that and the street, you'll start seeing a lot of that getting built over the next month. So we'll still see a lot more excavation activity happening, but you'll start seeing a lot more things starting to happen more vertically than they have in the past. And I'm not sure, can you specify, did the gas main get lowered? Is that done now?
Yeah, the gas main work got complete last
week?
week. So all the utilities are out of the way. I was actually just out there proof rolling. They got it pretty much up to subgrade on the road portion for maybe 85% of it. And they're hoping to start putting gravel on it this week and hopefully start curb and gutter Monday.
So just going to quick run through the cost update. So adding up the original contract costs as well as change orders 1 through 6. 4 through 6 were just recently accepted at the last park board meeting. Puts us at just a little over $2 million. Add the engineering to it, and then we'll talk here in just a moment about contract amendment 2. But that puts us with the cost share by the city, roughly about $500,000, a little over $500,000 under budget, the total budget for the project under the grant. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else with the monthly update. And then we'll probably get right into the contract amendment specifically, but I wanted to make sure I covered the project cost before that.
Okay, I can get into the contract amendment now then. So we provided the board a memo kind of outlining some of the additional efforts that WSB has been going through with this project. Most specifically with the construction phase of it. Hopefully you guys have had some time to look it over a bit and review. I'm gonna kind of go over it in summary here quick, but WSB was awarded the MLT Park project for design through construction in the summer of 2021. And at that point, there was a preliminary design plan done by SEH that kind of had the general layout of the park and some of the features. But throughout the preliminary design and design process that WSB went through with the park board, a lot of the features evolved and grew in complexity and detail of design. And kind of one of the hardest things to do is bid construction costs off of a concept design. And that's what we were requested to do in the RFP for this project. So as things grew in complexity, that kind of increased the amount of construction tasks that we would be doing out in the field and some of the review of the finishes and finer details that we have to do for reviewing of submittals of these higher level park features. And then even once the design was complete and it went out for bid, there were a few things with the canoe kayak launch that we had to pull out because the DNR didn't have approval yet. Worked through that in construction. The restroom feature of this park changed from a precast structure to a block-built structure. There's been a lot of submittals and back and forth between the contractor and WSP, making sure that we get that done so we can hopefully get that restroom built and design. And we pretty much designed it on the fly during construction here. So basically, we broke it down, our justification, into 3 parts. Construction observation, construction progress. We initially estimated this project kind of based off of what we had done in Memorial Park. Knowing now that this park is quite a bit more complex than what we did there, that the time that we needed to be out there, the duration of the project increased from what we had originally assumed. And then there were a lot of supply chain issues so far, like for storm sewer. We just got the last catch basin on site earlier this week, and it's getting installed right now. So there's been some delays to that road construction that have set us back and had required me to make multiple site visits to get compaction testing and everything we need done on that. A lot of the precast submittals have been taking longer to get than we would normally anticipate. Some of the steel stuff, like for the river overlook, has been taking a significant amount of time. Like I already talked about, the restroom facility, that changed from prefab to block built. We've been working with the contractor behind the scenes, trying to get this in so that we can get a building permit, get everything approved, so that we can move forward with that. The Amphitheater and Learning Center were originally stick-built structures. Pretty easy to inspect those, but once you get up into a precast beam and the connections that you need to make for that and the roof, and then the foundations that go into that larger structure required more in-field work from us. The river overlook was originally just an at-grade retaining wall structure, and now it's this basically cantilever bridge that goes out over the river bluff or river ledge there, and has steel beams and a lot more concrete. We have a 9-inch deck pour basically on that structure, so there's a lot more work involved in making sure that gets installed correctly. And then one of the biggest issues I've been having out there is all the different colored concretes. We have 4 different colored concretes, not including regular concrete, plus a few different types of finishes. And all that has, originally, when I talked to the contractor in the pre-con, they were intending to pour 30 cubic yards a day. I would say I've done 13 pours now, and 80% of them have been 4 yards apiece. So it's been really, I have to go out and test every day they have concrete on site to make sure it meets requirements. That's been a lot more work. We have to cast cylinders for each time they use a different concrete, and I have to get those to our lab and test, and each one of those costs about $100 per set. So for the construction observation, a lot of this required a higher level of inspection. We originally had like EIT, out of school, plan to do this work, but because of the detail and the intent of the project, we wanted to make sure that everything got done correctly. So I have been doing most of the inspection out there to make sure everything is done according to what the plan intent is. And I've been working through a lot of things with the contractor in the field, like some of the colored concrete, we had our first pour, with the lightest shade of concrete, and it looks barely different than normal concrete. And I think in the concept plan, we had some clear separation in colors between a lot of the concrete features. So we worked through with the supplier to make sure that we're getting that clear definition between adjoining concrete panels. So for construction observation, we're requesting an additional $30,000 for a lot of the stuff that's outlined in the memo there. Then talking about construction materials testing, like I already talked about, they're doing a significant amount of small pours, which require me to come out and test multiple times instead of what I assumed originally when it was bid, is that we would be pouring large sections of sidewalk and moving through the concrete pours very quickly. But this is far and beyond what I anticipated from the concept plan for concrete pours and testing. So we're requesting $10,000 for that. And then project management. I kind of talked about some of these things already, but Paul and I have been putting a significant amount of time in behind the scenes, making sure the intent of this park plan has been carried through, working with the contractor on getting that restroom facility changed over to block built, working through some of the submittals on some of these more complicated structures like the Overlook and the Amphitheater and Learning Center, making sure that the correct finishes and everything's matching the rest of the parks in the city, and everything is carried through the best we can. And we've had a lot of conversations with the park board as well to make sure that the intent is captured in this construction. One thing I haven't hit on yet is surveying. Due to the complexity and the amount of different elements that this contractor is trying to work on at the same time, and then the small footprint of this site, our surveyors come out quite a bit just to touch up stakes because they get hit. And there's at least 3 different contractors working out there right now, and they're all over the place, but it's a pretty compact site, so it's hard not to run into things. And we're asking for another $18,000 for just work related to additional project management that we didn't really foresee in the RFP process. So in total, we're requesting an additional $58,000 for additional scope of work that we've been working on through construction and what we're anticipating at this point.
Okay.
Are there any questions on the?
I definitely have some, but
Yeah.
Kevin?
Yeah, thank you. Would you say that WSB is an expert in the field of construction?
Yeah. In
Fair enough.
construction observation.
Assuming that the cost increases are justified, when I read through the list, it appears that virtually everything on the list revealed itself prior to the bid release, prior to us releasing the documents for bidding. Colored concrete, beam structures, da-da-da-da. So my question for you is, why are we hearing this now? Why did you not come to us at the time of bidding and say, look, guys, we have scope creep here, we have scope change, we are anticipating these additional costs to manage this project based on what we see the scope changing. Why are we only hearing about it now?
So a few of these features might have been apparent at the time of bidding for.
Well, let's go through the list.
contract.
Let's find out which ones were and which ones weren't. I think we'll find that almost all of them were.
So the restroom facility was not apparent at the time of bidding.
Correct.
But we had a change order for that.
Correct.
But that was after bid
Yeah.
because of issues that we discovered that the contractor had with procuring the precast structure.
It's my question exactly. So at the time of that change order, why didn't you ask for the money for WSB's portion of that change at the same time? Why wasn't that revealed to say, oh yeah, by the way, there's going to be another charge for this change order coming from WSB? What smells afoul to me here is that this is all coming after we've already made, we've already made the purchase. We're already well down the path. Did anybody here know that this was coming? I didn't know it was coming. That's what I don't like about this.
We knew, and I hope the park board knew, that we were going to have to work through some things to get a building permit acquired for that structure. We had to go through submittals, and we didn't realize how much work it was going to be until we got into that process with the contractor. Even so, like the color concrete and any of that testing work. Originally, even when I talked to the contractor at the pre-con, they said they were going to do 30 yards of concrete a day. They haven't done that at all, not anywhere close. So, I mean, we had conversations up front with the contractor to try to feel them out, see where our budget was going to be at, but they haven't even lived up to those.
So, sir, why are you asking the taxpayers to bear that burden instead of the concrete manufacturer that's one of your subs?
It's not one of my subs.
Well, it's under the contract, though, right? It's under the contract of this project?
My contract is to review their work and observe it and make sure that the contractor is building it per plan. I don't have control over their scope or means and methods. I can help them, try to push them for the city to make sure that the contract is done and completed per schedule. But I don't control their operations.
I would just like to add to what Kevin's saying in the fact that, let's go back to the initial project management planning. And there was more meetings than what was originally planned. And so I get that, and I can actually see where there may be some additional costs for those additional meetings up front. But after that's done and before the work is quoted, is sent out for RFQ, then to me, then that's the time to look at this and say, wow, this is different than what we were originally thinking. Good thing we had this long project management meeting. By the way, we're gonna have to charge some extra money for that, and I get that, and I think that's valid. And, but then at that point, how are the taxpayers, how is that fair for them if the contractor isn't pouring as much concrete as he's supposed to, if it's failing the testing and,
I'm not talking about failing tests.
but you're saying you're needing more tests because it's failing and you're needing to do more because, at least that's what I read in here. But again, it seems like why at this point, and even the shipping, the problems with the supply chain. Last year, in the middle of COVID, there was supply chain issues. And so why wouldn't we expect that there may be some supply chain issues still yet this year moving forward? And so that's where I'm having the biggest problem with this. The upfront planning, I can see, we had more time planning, but to me, then that takes and places you guys in the seat of, at that point, hey, this scope of work is different than what we were anticipating. Let's look at this real heavy right now at this point at the RFQ, and again with the bathroom changing, if there's additional engineering costs for drawing up the bathrooms and whatever else there is, why isn't that part of that change order at that point? So that I'm having a hard time swallowing this. Other than the initial extra upfront planning, but.
Mr. Chair, can I help clarify a few pieces for you?
Sure.
So to Matt's point, some of this was after the project was let. Some of the construction progress pieces are pretty valid. They probably wouldn't have been able to foresee the contractor taking as long as he has to get to the progress that he has. It has drug out quite a bit further than, even us as the city would prefer that they do. Especially to this point, we would expect them to be a lot closer. So some of the points in this amendment proposal are a little bit valid with the additional days on site are going to cost a little bit more with additional testing because some of the schedule of materials control does require a set of testing every day that they're pouring concrete. So when they do less per day and just more days of it, that ends up with being more testing. Some of these pieces, Kevin, you're right on with, we probably should have seen this a little bit sooner. When the restroom was changed, we should have known that there was going to be an additional inspection to it, when you're talking about a structural component to it rather than a prefab structure. I can't speak for WSB, but I'm thinking maybe that they felt that they were able to absorb that into the current scope with the current hours, but apparently they weren't able to do that. But there are some of these pieces that they probably couldn't have foreseen. A lot of it would have been the contractor control of the progress and how that they're doing some of their means and methods. But there are definitely a few things in here that after the project was fully scoped and bid, the structure stuff would have been a little bit more apparent at that time, like the Overlook.
Yeah, and I mean, we had some inclinations at bid or shortly thereafter, and that's why we were having conversations with the contractor to figure out how they were going to do this, what their operations were going to be, what that was going to look like. And until now, we weren't fully aware of how they were going to actually do it, because what they said in the pre-con when our first initial conversations about project and schedule and everything else happened, most of those schedule commitments have not really been true. It's been a lot slower than that. So at that time, I did think that we might have been able to absorb some of this cost, but it's grown beyond what we can absorb, and that's why I'm coming to you today.
Another couple questions.
Yeah, I got a couple when you're ready to.
Once, I'm a little fuzzy on contingent, what parts of this go into contingency or would fall into contingency, what parts don't, who makes that decision on whether that money should be coming from the contingency? And then I'm also curious about whether or not WSB is making profit off of this change order. The additional time, is the profit that is WSB profiting from these change orders being approved? Or are you just trying to cover your cost?
We are just trying to cover the cost that we have incurred. We are not making any profit off of this. In fact, we're probably already behind on the contract that we currently have.
So you're saying the numbers that you've presented represent true hard cost in hourly, in all of that, your actual hard cost. There's no profit in this?
No.
Okay.
Mayor?
Okay, so first of all, I just want to point out what's on the screen right now. We're looking at 51, almost 52,000 as the original budget.
For these 4 items.
Understood. And we're jumping to 109, basically $110,000. That's not a change. That's over double what was originally budgeted on these items. Over double. And I guess my biggest issue with this is that WSB didn't come into this process late in the game. They've been involved in this process the entire time, from the very beginning of this. And I have a really hard time looking at these numbers and saying that this isn't something that's popping up because there's extra money that did not get hit up in that bid. That bid ended up with $500,000 extra dollars. And I had this conversation with somebody in the community who said, keep an eye on that, because that's going to get eaten up in engineering fees. And it doesn't surprise me that now here we are getting eaten up in engineering fees on, I would argue, items that WSB has been involved with the entire time.
But we
From
had
the
to
very beginning.
bid these items before.
But you were involved with from the very beginning. You said
Yes,
you
we could
led
have
the
had
you led the meetings.
conversations about it.
But you guys led the meetings. You led the meetings in which the decisions were made to make the changes to the park, and then the park was put out for bid based off of the meetings that you led. And now here we are saying, but all this stuff is somehow a surprise. It doesn't sit well with me either. And I'm more concerned with the fact that there's money available, and now all of a sudden the money's getting eaten up. And I understand that there are things that happen along the way, but we've been dealing with this for 2 years. And we were surprised that that bid came in low. However, now all of a sudden we're looking at how this is just slowly going to get eaten up. Slowly going to get eaten up.
And my other concern was that there was another company that had bid this quite a bit higher. And we had good rapport with WSB and the Memorial Project, and, you know, you guys came in quite a bit under, and that good rapport helped us make that decision. And again, and I only say this because I used to be a contractor, and I used to be a subcontractor, and man, if I missed something on a quote, well, I made sure the next time I didn't miss it again. But and sometimes, you know, things come up and you don't foresee it, and if you didn't quote it, you know, if you can get a change order, great, but if you can't, you can't. And that's why, to me, I can see adding some cost through those initial meetings, because they did go beyond the scope of what was initially planned. But it seems like we should have had a dang good idea of what the scope of the project was then, at that point, when those bids went out for quotes. Anyone else?
Yep, I have a question. So going back to the contractors, so who hired them? Like, who do they report to? Because I'm just surprised that they can just like only pour a little bit of concrete when they're supposed to be pouring 30 CYs and they're doing 15, or that doesn't sound like they're doing their job.
Who's responsible for that?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Because I'm not
like,
out there watching it.
Well, I don't know who is supposed to be, that's what I mean, someone needs to do I don't know. That's my question.
So they're under contract with the city.
Okay.
And WSB is under contract to manage the contract or the construction of the project. So we are out there to do testing and observation to make sure everything's getting put in place per plan and contract. But we don't have control over their means and methods. As soon as we do that, we basically give them a free checkbook to, if there's a problem, come back to the city and say, you told us to do it this way.
That's how it normally works when the city hires someone to make the roads or whatever. I mean, I'm super naive.
The city in their contract states that this is your end date. This is when you have to have this project complete by, unless there's some sort of change in scope and they are awarded more time because of that. But the project has a completion date, and as long as the contractor is working towards that and they say that they can meet that date, WSB doesn't tell them how to meet that date.
Has the completion date moved?
Not yet.
Okay.
We haven't had
Help me
that.
understand this. If the completion date hasn't moved, your working duration during that time should be relatively the same. Maybe more trips this or there, but if the completion, I'm reading this thinking the completion date should have doubled.
WSB bid this at the concept design phase, and we bid it like we did for Memorial Park, where we were out there part-time. We came out, did the testing, observed when they were doing major features of the park, and that's what we were planning to do here. So we also anticipated that there would be a long period of submittals to get everything ready, procure, because of the long duration for procurement on items that we've been seeing. So we didn't think that they were going to start right away and work this slowly. We figured that they would get all their pieces in place and then get going to meet that completion date, and that we would be out there every once in a while doing testing, making sure everything's going well, checking in daily, but not for a long period of time. And the way that they've been doing their operations of building this park, it's required a significant more amount of time of observation and testing than we anticipated in the beginning.
Are they behind schedule? Jesse?
As far as I can tell from right now, yeah, I would expect them to be behind schedule. They still commit that they're going to meet the deadline as far as I've heard. But from their progress currently, I think that's a long shot.
What is the deadline?
I believe it was end of November, wasn't it?
Somewhere in there.
I think it's October
It's October something.
15th or something.
Mr. Chair, I have a
Yes.
couple questions, I guess.
Go ahead.
So just a couple positive things. I do appreciate your work and diligence in getting the canoe kayak launch. I know that was an ordeal, so I do appreciate that there was a lot of work involved in that. And the bathrooms were certainly a curveball. I guess, yeah, just to echo other comments, it seems a little odd that all these concerns haven't come up in prior status updates. It's been, oh, excavation's happening, things are going really well. And then now it's like, oh, well, pours are happening 4 cubic yards at a time instead of 15 to 30. Everything's behind. People are running over survey stakes. And we have to keep having those folks come back out. So that,
They haven't really got into major construction items until this last month. Before they were just kind of rough grading the site, moving things around, and we hadn't got any serious work that WSB has had to be out there and make sure that it's getting done per plan. So it was until recently that we really figured out that this isn't gonna work for what we had budgeted.
I'll go back to just the amphitheater as an example. You know, you'd mentioned that WSB assumed a stick-built structure at the park. But again, through those project management meetings, it was, you know, it was changed. So to me, that's the time to say, hey, this is different. We're gonna need more time, right up front. And then so to me, a lot of this, to me, the timing is, so, you know, I don't know where we move forward with this other than, you know, do we look for something that is a little more itemized, per each item? And then we look at that and vote on each one and say yes or no, yes or nay, or, you know. But again, I think we need, this is a lot of information, but I almost think we need more information to say, you know, what amount of money goes with each of these bullet point, each of these items that you have here. And Jesse, jump in if you have a comment on that, but.
Can I say something? Yeah, I mean, my comment would be, if this is valid, I want to see the daily logs. I want to see who was on the site for how long, from the day one till now. I want to see it on paper, these hours accounted for on that site. You know, which you obviously have because you've come up with figures. So that would be, you know, that would be my first request is to see the inner workings of how these hours actually got totaled up, project management and otherwise. Who's the staff? How much do they get paid for by an hour? You're saying we're only being charged for the actual cost, so that can't be shop rate or whatever, or billable rate. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us here to just ask for way more transparency with this before we just fork over 50 grand and trust you guys. Because I'll be honest with you, for me, the trust was gone when you didn't reveal this at the time of the bid release. So now I am very skeptical of what you guys are doing out there.
And I think the other part of that goes back to what Mayor Bedeau had mentioned, you know, yeah, there's 564,000 still there, but that's earmarked for that park. And if there's other stuff that we can do with that money, for the public, for the people who live here, you know, that's where we want to see that go. I mean, if these are valid things that you can show us, at the same rate, you know, I want to see you guys do well, and, you know, if these are all valid, great, but to me, I think we need more information.
So what are you looking for? Our contract invoices or?
I'd be looking for the hourly logs of staff who was on site from day one. Who the staff was, how long they were there, when they showed up, when they left. You guys obviously have it because you're billing for it.
Yeah, it's in our invoices and we can provide them. And for the most part, it's been me on site.
Because I'm just running the math here at 50 grand. What are we being billed hourly for this work? 207, is that what I saw?
That was for.
No, for the inspection, I've cut my rate down to 120.
The two something was.
50
for
grand
three.
divided by 120 is 450 unaccounted for hours.
You're only
416.
looking at the 30 grand for the construction observation, which would be at 120.
So, well, I guess that's what I'm asking for. So, I mean, we got, when you see a breakdown of the additional money through all
And this
spectrums.
is an estimate of projected work still to be done as well. So it's not gonna be, we're just handing you over the invoice that we've already billed.
Understood.
This is all very concerning to me. This is a process that has played out, and I've sat through these meetings. I've sat through the process and watched us go from looking at this from a 10,000-foot level to getting down into the weeds and then hopefully pulling back out a little bit to get out of the weeds a little bit. At no point should this have gotten to this. And I'm very concerned with how we go from hearing things are great and we're moving and things are happening, hearing a few people say, I would have thought there would have been some cement work done. Heard some of that. Dirt's been moving, but where's the cement work? To now all of a sudden being, we're just here all the time. There's all these things that are happening. We're not getting through that. I don't want to be rude, but this is what you guys do. And we don't do this work ourselves. Some of us do. Some of us are more into it than others. But we, as the representatives of the taxpayers, rely on experts to get this stuff done. And nothing in this meeting right here is telling me that I should have confidence in where things are going. Because nothing in this tells me that things that should have been brought up to people that are not going to be aware of this stuff has been brought forward with plenty of opportunity. Plenty of opportunity. And so it's concerning to me that updates that we should have been having, and I don't know when they would have been, how often we're supposed to be getting updates, but that none of these updates justified getting to this point here and doom and gloom on a project that should be moving along very, 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 very swiftly and very well. So I get back to the point that this feels to me, and I can't say it for sure, but this feels to me like there's money to be spent and we got to get that money spent. And I cannot stand that because I am a representative of the taxpayers, and it is my job to make sure that when these things are happening, that we are doing our due diligence to make sure that that stuff is correct.
Do you feel like we haven't been doing proper observation of this project, or we've been doing more than we should?
I feel like some point in here, there's been a disconnect in the communication on this project. Because as stated, you guys were involved from the very beginning, and there have been many opportunities along the way to have said, these things have been changed, we need to start looking at this. There's differences, especially in these structures. I fought hard to not have these bathrooms be what they are, and now we're all of a sudden back to cement bathrooms. So, that's a different comment to be made, but that stuff has been brought up along the way. We know that these structures have changed. Why are we now saying, well, because these structures have changed, this is more than what we anticipated the scope to be? But that was done a long time ago. That was done during these planning meetings. And it was done prior to the bidding on most of the items, I believe. Am I incorrect about that?
Say you're correct.
So that to me then says, well, wait a minute. Where does your expertise come in that? Because I'm not going to know that. I have to trust you. And that's what we hire you for. So just concerning, very concerning to me.
And one thing is that probably didn't help in the communication of this project is that we did lose our lead project manager on this right about the time of the construction being bid. And then myself and Paul have had to take this over, and we're getting caught up to speed on where the project was at. And that is kind of how some of this stuff got delayed further than it should have, and some of those conversations weren't had at the time when they were maybe discovered. But I feel like that might have contributed to some of this communication problem.
But again, that falls in your lap, not ours.
Sure.
Andrew?
I guess, yeah, I can, not knowing a lot about construction, I can believe these are expenses that you've mostly had and expect to incur with the work that's happening. It is harder to believe when it all happens at once, because this has been things ranging from, we had a meeting in like February where we picked, between 3 or 4 different colored concrete options. And there wasn't really a discussion of, well, this requires more testing because each color is a pour and there may be smaller pours. So there's going to be more on-site time. If that had come up then and said, yep, that's another $5,000 or $10,000, sure, I think that's part of the add-on. But to hear that now and hear the precast beams for the amphitheater just kind of all being tacked on at once, to the mayor's point, it does kind of feel like, true or not, right? It feels like, oh, there's extra money, let's try to get some of that. And I do believe a lot of these are legitimate. I just am frustrated by the way they've been communicated, and if there's been turnover, I get that. But again, I think we're all open to hearing that, hey, you know what, our lead PM left, we're a little bit behind the 8 ball, that's fine. But if we're at least in the loop on that, we can kind of know what to expect.
Well, and going back to what you mentioned about the difference in the colors, and to me, at some point, why wouldn't someone say, these colors are really causing us a headache? Are you sure you want to do that? We could probably do this cheaper if we just went all one color on this, or, at least have that conversation and say up front, if we continue with these colors, there's going to be a change order. There's going to be some additional costs that go with that. But again, the timing of it, and then, you lost a project manager. But then again, Paul Sandy's been pretty involved with this from the beginning as well. And so, I mean, it's not like this just fell into his lap and he didn't know anything about it either. And so
Yeah, but he wasn't aware of how WSB bidded on this side. I mean, he was aware of how the city was handling things, and he still had to get caught up with what WSB, that side of the contract.
'Cause I would have to say, if we vote on this today, that I would vote no to this. The only part of this that I really see that, yeah, I could really see where I would agree to is some additional changes to the initial project management team meetings, and what costs is associated with that. But the rest of it, for me, to vote anything yes would be more proof of actual costs that are being incurred on this. And Mayor?
Well, can I ask too, though? I mean, I know that there is always an extra incurred cost, but that's a part of the bidding process as well. That's kind of the point of bidding. That's kind of the point of putting your dollar amount and your stamp on it.
Right,
So even
right.
if there is more, even if we can show, it's a long distance from having put in a bid to where we're at here.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I would vote yes and approve that. I just want to see more. I want to see more. And for instance, the extra meetings up front, because there was a number of meetings that we had agreed to, and it went beyond that. And so, I can, to me, that's legit. But then at that point, when that goes out for bid, at that point, I'm wondering, why doesn't WSB have the expertise to see that, man, there might be some additional costs incurred, and at least, if nothing else, at this point, say, just so you know, with the changes that we've made from what we were anticipating, there may be some additional costs of this, and this that would go along with that. Because the other part of that is, to me, this isn't a Memorial Park project. This is a riverfront project that has a lot of different variables that are attached to it than what was attached to the Memorial Park project. And with that being said, that's, as the mayor had mentioned, that's why we're relying on you guys to be the experts in that.
Sure.
So I'd like to ask Mr. Dean, please, if you could just kind of walk us through what the steps would be to not approve this at this time, what we're like, what's likely to happen over the next month. It sounds like the consensus, correct me, everyone sitting up here if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the consensus is that we feel like a lot of this is valid, but we feel like we need a much more detailed breakdown before we can say, pay this, not pay, we have troubles with this, that. So can you just kind of walk us through contractually what we're obligated to with WSB, what their moves potentially might be in this? And, hopefully we're all in this together and we can work through this, but can you just walk us through that a little bit, Mr. Dean, please?
Absolutely. So our contract is up to and not exceeding a certain dollar amount. So as of right now, our agreement will not allow WSB to bill us any more than the original contracted amount. We can table this item until September. At that time, I'm sure WSB will provide whatever the board is looking for additional information to make the justification for that. And at the time, in September, if the park board approves the additional amount, that would allow them to bill above and beyond what the original contract amount would be for.
Thank you.
I just had one more question.
Go ahead.
So you mentioned, right, things are going to have to pick up quite a bit if they're still planning to finish on time. Is that sort of reflect, I know you mentioned, right, you're projecting the additional visits and testing you'll have to do. Is there a risk that that could go even higher if they're trying to pour concrete in October and it's cold out and it's not setting? Like, I'm just trying to think how this could go off the rails, if this number could go higher than we even expected is today.
It could, but WSB would try to manage within the amendment that we received at that point, because we already asked for this additional work. We wouldn't be able to ask for it again.
Okay.
Who, and maybe this is to Jesse, who directs to them the park board's concern about time frame?
To the contractor?
Yes.
The contractor is managed by WSB out in the field, but ultimately their contract is with the city. So if they're having issues with their deadline, if they're going to pay, for instance, liquidated damages, those damages would come to the city. So their issue, if they run out of time, will be with the city.
Would the park board be comfortable with having Jesse express that concern with them, or express that concern to them? Of time frame.
They're not doing their job.
Well, of time frame. For us, it is more about time frame. We have allotted X amount of time for them to complete the project. Whether it's done or not by now makes no difference, because they still have X amount of time. I'm wondering if that's something that the park board would like to convey to them, that there is concern at this point.
And we have been conveying that concern to them, but if you guys want to reinforce that, that would be just fine.
I'm wondering if the park board is interested in conveying that.
Well, I think the last thing we want to see is this spill over into next year, for sure. But the other thing that I guess I'm not sure of in the contract is, are there penalties for not meeting the due date?
I'd have to look at that contract to see what that would be.
No?
I don't think so.
Mr. Chair, if I can make a recommendation, I believe Matt could reach out to the contractor, request more of a formal schedule for the remaining portion of the contract to see what their timeline is expected, so that it is on paper that this is what their timeline will be to complete on time. And if they have concerns that they will not, we can start asking questions of why those concerns weren't brought up earlier.
Can the contractors come and talk to us at the next meeting? Like, would they, since a lot of this seems to reflect on them? I don't know if they do that.
Like the concrete person?
Yeah, whoever, like, yeah.
Well,
Technically, the city is the contractor. It would be the
the prime
the subs.
contractor is doing most of the concrete work.
I don't know if it would go anywhere, or if they would just get frustrated and work slower or something. I don't know.
We can request that they come to the park board, but it is very atypical for a prime contractor to address the committee.
Yeah, I think that just given your opinion that it seems behind, I would like to reinforce that message, because that seems concerning.
So would anyone like to make a motion moving forward on this?
a motion to table this and get the information, if you guys can get that information we requested for the September meeting?
Certainly.
Specifically, do we want for each of these 4 line items to be broke down? Because in each line item of these 4 budgeted and proposed budget, there's a number of different things inside of each one of these that, to me, I'd almost like to see costs associated with each of these line items. And, you know, I know you have some stuff in here, but to me, after those project management meetings, it's gonna be really hard for me to add any cost to that. Because we did trust that you guys were the experts in this, but, who made the motion? Kara? Kara?
Yep. But if I need to add that?
Well, what do you guys think? I mean, I think we need more information, and if you have billable stuff here that goes inside of each one of these, original budgeted items, and I think we need to see more. And Jesse, if there's something that you can do in looking at the contract, or, but can I add to her motion or not? Probably not, huh?
You can. You could add it, but she'd have to
add it to
approve
her
it.
own
Yeah,
motion,
she'd
yeah.
have to edit
Do you approve that, Kara?
Yes, I approve what you just said. Yep. You can add that to my motion.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, give a good,
Lay it on us, Kara.
give it the 1-2 on that one.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion that we are gonna table approving the 58,000 until September, once we receive all the information from WSB on these stated, for 3 items: the construction, observation, construction materials, and project management. Yeah,
Well done, I'll second.
okay, thanks.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I did. Jaeger, sorry.
All in favor?
I
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks.
Thanks.
We're gonna find out how much we were worth in those design meetings. So we did those for free. We're gonna find out how much we're gonna find out just exactly what we donated, how much our time was worth.
Okay, we will move on to the Brainerd Park Board agenda request. City Engineer, Director Dean.
Which item again?
Brainerd Park Board,
Are we on the ARPA?
recommended parks projects for use of
Okay.
ARPA.
I just wanted to make sure I had it right. So at the July 5th council meeting, the mayor and Councilmember Johnson requested that we discuss potential use of ARPA funds that are available, and the guidance was to target about $500,000 for those projects. I have spent some time to put together a few options or suites of projects that would kind of satisfy that $500,000 target. Addresses in a couple different approaches. One would be through attacking items that were listed in the 2018 facilities assessment, trying to advance the capital improvement program as it sits today, or other different miscellaneous rehab projects. With that, we have a recommendation from the staff that when we discuss this and the different options, we're recommending option 4. It would be the Bain, Buffalo Hills, Buster, Gregory, JC's option. Is listed in the amount of about $476,170. I do believe that this would allow us a little bit more flexibility to refine those dollar amounts. Again, those were based on a 2018 facilities assessment. And my concern there is I did put some inflation numbers on that from the 2018, about 20%. Knowing that we've had quite a few increases, but I'm concerned on a few of them that may be a little bit more than that. since then. So I do like that that option does have a little bit less. But there are other options in here that I didn't realize that were already done, like the Gregory Park warming house that was recently completed a couple years ago. That is listed as a part of one of the options, or a couple of the options. So if we wanted to go that route, we would definitely replace that with something that has not been completed yet.
Okay.
Can I chime in real quick?
If I say no, are you going to anyway?
No.
Of course you
That
can.
would be inappropriate. Not that I'm not inappropriate. Little concern in this, in that this still isn't quite getting to what the council is asking. Council is asking you to find projects that you guys prioritize and move forward. And this, it doesn't quite go down that road. There's still that very specific thing that they're asking you guys to do. Find projects that you think are high priority and move them forward to the council.
So I think, you know, Jesse's coming into this at the 11th hour, and, you know, a couple months ago, the city council was saying, we need this now, you know, and we were gonna meet the very next day to start. And on top of that, some of the stuff, we were like, well, hey, you know, do we really have to have this by this time? Because, you know, we've been doing, master planning, which we would like to continue. And I think that plays a big part of this. So I think part of this, to me, I don't know that we're ready to even choose an option, although this does give a nice format for breaking this out and saying, hey, let's pick and choose the ones where we can make the biggest impact. And so in looking at that, I'm looking at option 4 and thinking, I don't know if that fits where we're at. But you haven't been around to be involved with those. You're gonna tell me the name of this every 20 times.
Master planning?
The master planning. And so, yeah, unless something's changed with the city council, you know, my thought is our direction was to, your handwriting's terrible. No, I'm kidding. Is to continue plugging with that master planning. On top of that is to meet as a park board and say, you know, I don't think I don't think we're prepared to say, yeah, let's go with option 4, because we've all had a lot of discussion in this master planning to say, hey, you know, you know, 476,000, 500,000, whatever it is, you know, how much time do we have? Because, you know, there's still some parks that we have to look at, and we may want to include them in this. And Kevin?
Yeah, that is the $500,000 question to me, is what is the actual time frame for it? When do we have to slide something across the desk? If somebody knows that, I'd love to know that answer. Jennifer Bergman has her hand up.
Glasses on and all.
Whoa, this is
So, yeah, but I have to do this, you know, so I can
Even
see
better,
you
even
and what
better.
I'm reading, or.
because once you do this, you can always do this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The City Council will be having a work session on October 11th. And what staff is doing is we are putting together projects with vetted numbers so that on October 11th, the City Council can look at those projects. As you know, we have about 1.5 million in ARPA funds, and they can identify which projects they would like us to move forward. So part of the discussion, as City Engineer, Public Works Director Dean mentioned, one of the things that was discussed back in July at the work session with the council was, or I think it was February, was parks are important. And if this money is to be used because, or we're getting this money because of COVID, that we want our kids out in our parks exercising, which is the best way to help not get COVID. So that was kind of what we heard from the council, was that really some of this money should be going into our parks. So barring the oopsie that I made when Paul and I were here trying to get this done more quickly, after talking to the chair PNF the discussion we had was to delay this till October and be able to have a good, intelligent conversation with the city council as to where they would like to allocate ARPA funds. Does that answer your question?
I have one follow-up question. You use the word vetted numbers. Does that mean Jesse gives it a ballpark, or does that mean that we've got something and we actually talk to some subs and vendors and get kind of a number?
So, yes.
Okay, got it.
I will give you an example. One of the requests that I know is coming from BPU is the river crossing. So they do have a number. They did reach out to a contractor. It is $1.2 million. That will be what is brought forward with some contingency. These numbers were vetted in 2018 by Widseth. We all know that was 4 years ago. We all know that the world has changed considerably in 4 years. Jesse did build in an inflation factor to some of these. Did we actually go out and get bids and ask contractors and get down to that real nitty-gritty? No. Did we do at least a little more work than $500,000 for parks? Yes. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair and Board, really quick, if I can kind of specify some of the options and how I crafted them. These are more just approaches. By no means do I expect these numbers to be hard and fast by any means, because I have not put the time in that I would really like to. To be quite honest, my timeline would be, depending on what the approach would be, I would look at, let's take option 4, for instance. It's the items from the facilities assessment for those handful of select parks. I would dive a little bit deeper in what was identified in that facilities assessment, what hasn't been addressed to date. Input real harder dollars to what items do remain at those parks, and then come up to the September board meeting with a little bit better of another dollar amount for that approach. But this just kind of gives us a guideline of how to direct our focus for the next month, instead of, there's about 50 different projects you can see listed here. I don't know if I have enough time in me to price out 50 projects and let everybody kind of pick and choose. So I thought this was a better approach, to put an approach to it of how does the board want to tackle a suite of options, and then we can focus our attention.
Yeah, and I love how you have this broken into different options, because we can also look at this and
Make our own options.
make our own options. And with that being said, my thought is we get back to work with our master planning, and we sit down as a group, because we are meeting every couple of weeks, and say, let's start looking at, we can pull, and we can do the same thing with this, the itemized list from our master planning, and say, what's gonna make the biggest impact for our community immediately, with these kinds of funds. And really, that's what we're looking at, right? That's what we're looking to do here. Mayor?
Yeah, so first of all, I don't dislike what you've done, because it gives a stepping stone to move forward in the process. However, $500,000 is just a random number that has never been allocated from the city council. So
get that.
how we get to 500,000, I don't think the city council is looking at you and saying, you got to get to 500,000. That is counterintuitive to what they're asking.
The last I heard, it was 500 to 800,000.
So you could, listen, if you come forward with 1.4 million and the city council says that's the greatest 1.4 million we've ever seen, great. This is a realistic approach in that it gets you to a number and you can look at things. But again, the council is looking for you as a board to go through and pick your highest priorities and what you think is the best option for the city to use that money for.
And that's what we're looking for.
I think we can do that. I absolutely think we can do that. And I think I could pitch to the group a way of which we could do this.
Go ahead, Kevin.
And that would be, we all know these parks. We've been through most of the master planning together. We've all been a part of this. I think we could all work at home by ourselves and then come back, and we've done this virtually, this exact same system on some of our master planning. Come back with our list. This is Kevin's list of priority. This is your list and your list and your list so far. And we'll see what we have for common ground. And just by a lottery-type system by commonalities within what we come back with, I think we could kind of come up with a pecking order of items that we could then ask Jesse to put some rough numbers to, and then I think this could all happen prior to October, especially if we're going to be picking up master planning again. We could kind of come up with a list with some rough numbers behind it and say, this is what we want to put in front of the city council. I think that would be the way to do it. So we could work independently, come back as a group, as a whiteboard. Here's all our ideas, boom. What do you think? That's my idea.
Yeah, I like it, and I think, but I also think we have some parks that we need to, that we could quickly address in our every 2-week meetings.
Yep.
And so that we could even push in front of that and say, let's talk about a couple more parks, even if it's, let's look at Lum Park. Even if it's, what about that park would we wanna, see change most immediately, and then have all of that in front of us to say, now let's, as individuals, come up with our options and then meet and with Jesse as well and Jennifer and Mayor Bordeaux. I think that's kind of how we've been doing this with our master planning, and just keep plugging ahead on this.
So hypothetically, if
Have something concrete for the council for October.
So hypothetically, if we came back in 2 weeks with our pick list, or with our list of wishes, because this is even before the master planning, come back with our list of wishes, pass it over to Jesse at that time or narrow it down, pass it over to him at that time to give us kind of some rough ballparks. So for our September meeting, we would have top 10 or 15 items, maybe it's 1.5 million, but they'd have the numbers kind of vetted by Jesse. So at that September meeting, we could say, look, here's the list, boom, 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 this is what we feel good about, boom, we're done by the end of September, and we can send it off in October.
Yeah, we can do that, because we can, whatever we meet on that same meeting can be a master planning meeting.
Correct.
Yes, Kim?
3 weeks probably, because council meets the day after Labor Day.
Okay.
The 13th, because then the regular meeting is 2 weeks after that.
Yeah, we could still meet that.
September 13th.
What I was saying is you could still meet in 2 weeks.
We could still meet in 2 weeks, correct,
Because
Just do it before.
we don't plan on having something for the council on that meeting.
till October, yeah.
I'm just saying it's the
Couldn't,
after the holiday weekend.
Are you all okay with meeting the day after Labor Day?
I am.
sure.
A group.
I guess my only concern is if our lists of wishes, comes back with things that we don't end up including in the master plan for a park. Like if I come back and say, oh, I really want to do the scoreboards at Buffalo Hills, and then when we get to the Buffalo Hills master plan, we're like, no softball fields there.
Right.
That feels sort of at cross purposes.
But you're the ones doing the master plan. So within the group, you should get to that.
Correct.
I think we can easily,
vet it. We can
weed that
Yeah,
out.
we can weed it out
Yeah.
during that meeting.
Okay.
I think we can.
Yeah, I'm on board with
Yeah, I think that's easily done.
Love it.
So 2 weeks, we adjourn to master planning meeting, which will include us bringing some options forward for,
So everyone has homework.
Yep.
okay?
Hey, Kim, was your point about the council meeting that there's not really space here for us to meet?
SPW generally doesn't start, at the earliest would be 6:30. So I think if you met at 4, you would be safe.
Jesse, you don't have any say over that, do you?
I like it.
Okay.
But this is a great skeleton because some of these things may very well end up on our
Right.
pick list.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps, so thanks for that, Jesse. Any further discussion on this? All right. I think we can move forward to the, are we talking about Kim now?
Yep.
What a quitter.
Careful.
I
Mr.
think
Chair,
that's where
do-
we're at, except the retirement of Administrative Specialist Kimberly Finch. Director, Dean?
Mr. Chair, I do have one revision that the severance payout is not part of the agenda request. but we do regretfully accept her resignation coming up this fall.
Okay. Yeah, we have to. Yeah, she can't quit if we don't approve it. Oh, Kim.
I'll make the motion to accept, with regret, the retirement and to authorize severance payout per the IBEW admin support union contract.
Do you have a second?
Second shape.
We have another
No one's very happy, no one's happy about this, Kim.
We're all mad about
motion
this.
and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. None being heard. Oh,
Cookies a month early for us then?
More time to make them.
I think I can speak for the whole group. I've probably been around you more than anyone. We're gonna miss you, for sure. Yeah. Okay, so now I think we can move to the added agenda items. 2023 capital budget.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair.
Jesse.
So we'll go through a few of these things, and I think the easiest way to do it will be to go through the summary of the budget, and then a little bit of detail, and then go through the capital if we could. So for our proposed budget, we're proposing a little bit of increase in expenditures. That shouldn't be too surprising considering some of the inflation measures that we've seen throughout the year of this year. Between a lot of our operational costs, a lot of those have gone up compared with 2021 as well as just through the first half of 2022. Revenues, we're projecting a slight increase. It's not much. Unfortunately, the revenues does not carry with inflation unless you change some pricing. So we did not budget for a significant increase. We do have in there about $500,000 budgeted in capital, but overall about 1.5 million, which is a 6.5% increase in 2023 over 2022. Going into kind of more of the detail in the line items, again, most of this is going to be, the increases are going to be seen in the supplies and personnel, wage increases, motor fuels, a lot of the oil and lubricants that we use for repairing our equipment in the parks. A lot of those prices have gone up considerably. So we did budget for an increase in those. Ideally, we'd like to see some of those prices come back down, but that's pretty speculative, so we're going to plan for an increase on that. And the same thing with some of the gravel that we've used on the softball fields and the baseball fields. Those prices have gone up incredibly much more than we have seen in years past. So we do feel like we need to budget appropriately to capture some of those costs. Computer technical support, you'll see a little bit of an increase there. That's with the migration over to our new parks management system. Other than that, there wasn't a ton of difference there. Let me see where the other changes we want to mention. In office and operating supplies, if you go over to concessions, you'll notice that we're running a net deficit on that, and a lot of that is in new tablets that are being provided to the concessions. We're obtaining 3 new tablets. So we do have a purchase of those 3 tablets in the budget. Now that purchase will drop off in the 2024 budget, but the cost to operate those, the telephone company costs, those will be continuous. So we'll have a little bit more cost with those tablets, and those are to accept credit cards at those concession stands. So that is something we'll have to consider moving forward with our budget, is how to capture those costs just for the phone service for those 3 tablets. Otherwise, I think most everything was pretty close. I think those were the big ticket items that you'll see a lot of the difference between 2022's budget and 2023's budget, is capturing some of those inflationary items like fuels and oils, as well as the addition of tablets for the concession stands. Is there any questions with the operating budget?
Somehow I have a couple of questions about concessions. First one was just for Katie. I know you made a lot of changes this year. Do you feel like those have been good? Is there anything you want to change for next year?
I'd like to wait till after we're done this fall to make like an adjustment on things, just to see how this fall goes.
Cool.
If that is helpful. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah. No, I was just curious because you had a good plan coming into this year. And then, Jesse, just the cell service for the tablets. Would we be able to get Wi-Fi at our concession stands and then also offer that to the public as a benefit of being in the park and save on the recurring costs and provide a service?
That would not be covered with this. This would just be like your cell phone service through like Verizon. So the tablet, to be able to process those credit cards, would have to have a networking service. So you'd be paying, I believe it was $35 a month, give or take, for the cell service for the tablets. That would not cover like a Wi-Fi hotspot. Those would be probably a considerable amount more if you're going to have multiple people connecting to it, which you could add, but like I said, that'd be a considerable higher cost.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Kevin.
Mayor Bedell.
Mayor Bedell?
Could you walk me through the program operations and the cost and the cost differential?
Per program?
It doesn't necessarily need to be per program, if you want to take that approach, just kind of walking us through that differential in cost there. I mean, we're back up to 117 on cost for programs.
Sure. So pond hockey was pretty generally about the same. Outdoor rinks, the majority difference there was in personnel. We did budget a little bit more for, thank you.
For warming house attendants, it depends on how long the ice lasts, what kind of winter we have. We were over budget for the last couple of years, so we did increase the budget for personnel.
Concessions, we covered a little bit of the difference there, mostly is in tablets. The revenues and tournaments has gone down, and this is just based on previous years' trend. So this is why that revenue did go down under tournaments. Other than that, the expenses stayed pretty much flat. Special events did not change very much.
Can I just mention one thing on tournaments? Sorry, Jesse, not to
No, go
jump
ahead.
on it, but the tournaments too, now that we no longer conduct the tournaments, really whatever tournaments we do help with will be reimbursed if we cost to build those. So really the revenue and the expense should be equal. So that's why there's a zero, we're not making money on tournaments, we're just recouping our cost, is what I thought the intention of the park board was.
Kickball, I believe the only increase there was again in personnel, and I believe this is for a referee or umpire,
Correct. So we just increased for the referees, I think it was $2 per game, as suggested by Katie. And then also the other increase would be the workers' comp for those umpires as well that the city has to pay. That was the difference. For adult softball, we also did increase the rates for the umpires by, I do believe it was $2 per game, just as a budgetary recommendation.
And then going on through the last two, generally flat, just about everywhere else compared from 2022 to 2023. Kind of going back to that summary on most of the difference is going to be in the fuels and stuff, but that's under the maintenance, not necessarily the programs.
Yeah, so furthering my question, so this does not include our paying out to have our programs run for us? So right now, we currently have the YMCA and Brainerd Community Ed operating those programs?
I believe those under the professional services under park maintenance.
Yes, and those would be other programs then that, these are the ones that the city is still in charge of, where those programs, the baseball, that kind of stuff, that is not on this budget, but that is in professional services, the 18,000 that's budgeted there.
Okay, are we foreseeing an increase in those costs?
Not at this time.
I think the plan is to meet with both Community Ed and the YMCA this fall,
Do we know?
which is what we've done in the past. And then they came back with some additional expenses.
So I know last year, when Community Ed met, they made that decision in spring that they would be increasing their costs. Do we know if that's the case? We should, I mean, we should probably be checking into that, because last year, I believe they made that decision in March.
Yeah,
or
and
April.
part of
But
that,
didn't let us know that till
part of that is they had a new
much
director.
later.
They had a new director.
Well, that decision was made prior to the season, so I'm wondering if the same has happened again this year.
Well, I think a lot of it would depend on the meeting that we have with them, Katie.
If I have some emails out, I'm gonna get a report from them before our next park board meeting in September regarding their numbers, what they're using our money for, a breakout. I think we wanted that, more of a breakout of what our money's going towards, what their operating expenses are. And then once we have that, I'm hoping we'll have a better idea of if they're gonna make an increase. I wouldn't say, based off of what I witnessed, if an increase would be necessary for 2023, but I think we should offer them that opportunity to give us a report and then base kind of our inkling on what we want to do off of that.
But Katie, you don't foresee, in your eyes, you don't foresee that there should be an increase? Okay.
As for the preliminary budget, it might be a good idea just to include a modest increase in those. I mean, we can always reduce it by the end of the year once we get that information from them, but how does the park board feel about putting an increase in there for the preliminary budget?
I know how the mayor feels about that.
How does the mayor feel about that?
The mayor thinks that money that you put in the budget, even if it's preliminary, has a tendency to get spent.
Okay, so this is the park board's budget, I'm just posing the question.
That's why the mayor doesn't have a say on that.
I think it's prudent to have our discussion with Community Ed and the YMCA and, hear what they have to say. And, I look at this and, this is, Baxter's paying $35,000. That was a few years ago. And so I'm guessing theirs has gone up even more so, but, so, I think the additions that they added last year, I felt were, not above and beyond what, it didn't strike me as them just looking for more. I mean, they were taking on more, and so, I
they made that
think
decision.
we wait and have the conversation with them and then go from there.
Just like to have it noted that they made that decision before running our programs.
I mean, we can always look at this decision being made, in the fall as well, but
My concern, though, is if it's not in the budget, what's gonna happen when they come back with a 5% increase or a 10% increase, then we have nothing to cover it. Or we do like a 5%, I mean, this is the park board budget that the council president is going to present to, or the park board president is going to present to council on Monday night. And so whatever you guys want in the budget, I'm just saying, if you come to council and say that you need a 6% increase and then come in December and say you need a 10% increase, that could be a little hairy. There's not going to be, you can always lower, you cannot raise your preliminary levy.
duly noted.
I was saving that good news for you, Mr. Chair, for next Monday meeting, that we would ask that you present for that.
Is this next Monday that we're talking?
And I'm sure if you can't be there, you can
Sure.
pass it off to your vice chair.
Yeah, well, you see, he just hit my shoulder, so I don't know if I'm gonna,
I heard that, that sounds
more
like
than
you
prepared
can't
to
make it on the
present if you
29th. So again, I just ask that whatever the park board decides, we can have that information ready for Monday night. But if you tell me not to increase it, then we will leave it at that amount.
okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I think it would be wise to plan for an increase. I don't see things staying flat in cost.
No, I don't, the other part of that is they, you know, they all are looking to increase the size and the numbers in their program. So with increased numbers comes increased costs, so. I think it's probably prudent to add 5-6% at least into that cost, at least budgeted. And we'll have a good discussion with them. I mean, it's, we're not gonna let it just be, well, we think this or we think that. I mean, it's been 2 years now, so, of them doing this, so I think we have a lot better feel about what this is, what it all entails. So. Any further discussion on the budget?
No, do we need to make a motion right now then to do that?
To accept this budget?
So,
Add? that
Mr.
percentage
Chair,
on?
really quick, I've only gone through the operating, I have not touched the capital yet.
I said one more question about the operating.
Okay.
For the pond hockey, I know, Katie, you mentioned the equipment was pretty gross. I guess to me, if we're going to keep offering pond hockey, we should invest enough to make it something people want to participate in.
ARPA.
Yeah, like just running a thing with smelly equipment.
I would love new equipment. I would love that. But, I have to work with what I have. Ultimately, where I'm at, so either I get more money or I have to fundraise to get more stuff.
I think with that being said, we need to know.
That's what I was gonna say. We don't know
We
the,
can't,
yeah.
we need to know what that is. And some costs that go with it.
I have ballpark numbers from someone who wants to make jerseys, new jerseys, that we would reuse, but
How much is it? So jerseys and then equipment for pond hockey only, or is there any other sports that? Is there like ice skates? I mean, don't we rent skates? Are they gross or anything? Or okay. Oh, so if they're yeah, okay.
we're serving 5,000 people. That's how many people came to our warming houses last year. So that's something you also consider. Nothing matters.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'm speaking for myself only here, but I feel like I don't know what we need. I mean, I'm not out there every day divvying out the equipment. I don't know that we need lights at the softball fields necessarily. I mean, the stuff, I feel like I want staff to come to us and say, look, here, boom, here's a list. This is our needs to do just our daily operations. I mean, we talk about playground equipment, we talk about parking lots and all that kind of thing, but I feel like it's incumbent upon staff to tell us when we're starting to fall behind so that we as a group can see what that money is, see if we want it in our budget, how to handle that, and just have that in front of us. Because we don't, we're not on the inner side working. Or, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not on the inner side working, and when I hear that we need something, I'm like, oh, I had no idea. Why is there no value to this? Why is it not on our capital budget or so forth? So that'd be my direction to staff is if there's a need, we need to know, and we need to know figures. We talked about this a little bit with the lights a month ago, and we're hoping to get some numbers in the lights so that we can have that in front of us. So that type of thing.
Yeah,
That's all.
Definitely. I'll start bringing more things up then. There's a lot of things to bring up. But as far as the jerseys, I'm looking at a $3,000, and those would be used year after year after year. We've had the same ones for the past, since I've been working here for almost 9 years. So $3,000 investment. We do take registration, volunteer coaches. We can get sponsors, but that would be an investment that we'd need to probably make sooner than later, even this year. But yeah, $3,000 for jerseys, and then probably an added couple thousand for new equipment.
For what?
For new equipment, for safe helmets. You know, some of completely, like they're cracked, we have to toss them, that type of thing.
I feel like this should be almost our every July kind of thing. Staff comes back to us with jersey, the list so that we can get it in order for our September presentation. Gives us a little bit of time to review it as a group. So if it's a, June, July kind of annual thing, here's what we're falling behind on, this is what we really need, I'd love to have that.
Yeah, but we talked before that this is kind of where we've been before, is the month prior. And we talked about, let's start having this conversation in May, right?
I wasn't worried because you're presenting and you.
Well, I was gonna until you hit my shoulder. Now I gotta go back and have an MRI done, but.
Next Monday, right?
Yeah, I think it would be, if you can get us some, if the 3,000's a number and whatever the number is for helmets, that would be nice to know what that is. Yeah. On anything, as Kevin mentioned, but.
Well, that can lead me right into the capital budget discussion too, and that is something that we could include with the capital budget if you wish to do so. So as of right now, we had some revisions from the capital budget from spring. Most all the equipment, kind of the annual weed and feed, ADA upgrades, those did stay. I did make some adjustments based on some of our discussions regarding master planning with Kevin. As well as the discussion about ARPA funds and the capital improvement program. We did make some adjustments with the Buffalo Hills Lion Park surfacing project, about $250,000. I'm proposing to move that back a little bit until we can properly vet the master plans and develop a really strong set of priority list before we put a $250,000 project forward. The Buster Park Gazebo, I did propose that this one get pushed back, and the reason why is this is one of the potential options in the ARPA fund discussion. So I did not want to include it in this capital plan if it was going to be addressed through the ARPA funds. And then the only other change would be the Memorial Park parking lot resurfacing. Again, this is similar to the Buffalo Hills discussion of getting a strong feel for the master plans, what the priority is, and do we put $150,000 into resurfacing the very large parking lot if that's not what the park board would want to do for the next 15 years. So I want to make sure we have plenty of time before we put together a project that spends $150,000. So those are the majority of the adjustments from what the spring capital budget was to currently. So this is how we get to the 550, give or take $100,000 that we were proposing the capital budget. So it is down a little bit. This is also to help alleviate some of the concerns that we're going to see in the budget for the city for next year as well.
Any questions, comments?
I know we had talked about the lights at Memorial. Are we still waiting on numbers for what that?
No, we're not. We do have numbers for those. We were quoted, so including poles, it would be about $380,000. So you'll see in the ARPA funds, I did put that, I think it's option 7. I put about $400,000. That's assuming that next year we would see some increase in costs over what's quoted this year. But that would be top to bottom, poles, lights, the whole bit. There is some cost savings if we decided to just replace the fixtures and not the poles. It's not an appreciable savings. It's about, I think it was $260,000. So a majority of it is in the fixtures. There is, 100 and some odd thousand that is in the poles. The other issue with just doing the fixtures is the warranty on those lights goes down from, if I remember right, 15 years to 5 years. I'd have to verify that, but it goes down to about 5 years for a warranty on the fixtures if you don't do the poles with it. And then we would have to pay every time we need them to adjust those lights if need be. So we do have some of those numbers anyway to review.
Cool, thank you.
Yep.
The Memorial Park concession lockers restroom. Is that for inside the Mills field?
I believe it is, right?
Oh, to make the concessions,
To just keep them from continuing to fall down is my understanding, but
I don't really remember that.
Isn't the-
Inside of Millsfield?
isn't the kitchen like not Department of Health certified?
Oh, yeah, okay, now I remember. Yeah.
I believe part of that was bleachers also, actually.
I don't remember lockers.
I don't recall
Remind me
anything
about
with the
that.
lockers, but, the other part of that is, there's another phase of Memorial Park that's not completed yet, so if you swap one for the other, that's. Okay. Any other comments, concerns?
This is the way I look at it, guys. I mean, this is kind of a placeholder here until we kind of get through our master planning, so it's close, but I'm sure that next year's really the year we're gonna roll out a long-term plan and vision that's, much more thought out and much more accurate to our long-term vision money-wise. So I see this as, it's gonna get us through.
I guess I would want to swap some of our buildings for the lights. That's a program people pay us money to play, and when we can't let them play, especially in the fall, when the sun sets at 7:30, it's just hard to maintain a reputation of a park system when we can't keep the lights on. So I would want to swap some of that, knowing that the master plan may swap what we want the buildings to. Well, it's JC's, but that's my thoughts.
Further discussion?
I don't think so. Mr. Bordeaux had something. Was it now? Sorry, sir.
No, it can be a comment made.
Okay.
Okay.
So I just have a question, excuse me.
Yes.
What would you like to present to council? Do you want to swap out those buildings? Do you just want to say, with a lot up in the air, maybe it's reducing the capital even more and adding in, $5,000-$10,000 for the programs? What are the thoughts? I guess this is what we currently have, but if you guys want to change something, this would be the time to change it before it's presented to council.
Well, you can always go lower, though. Let's not pretend that's not a possibility. You can always go lower.
But I just heard the lights are 400,000, we don't have that much in there. So, and that triangle should be a shade structure, not a shad
Shad, yeah.
structure, sorry.
Maintain the shad.
I guess the two things I would swap are the JC's warming house and the memorial lockers, but that's still a net of 100,000, and that this already seems high given our budget for next year. So maybe we just have to put the lights in ARPA and cross our fingers.
So I missed out on what's going on with the lights. Was this a discussion from last month?
Oh, sorry. Yes, if I may, Mr. Chair. One of the items that was brought up by staff was the issues that we're having with the nickel metal hydride lights or the non-LED lights. I'm not sure if they're nickel metal hydride, whatever they are. There you go. So in that they're turning off on their own during a game or blowing fuses, got to read. So it's become kind of a pattern that happens almost nightly, as I'm understanding it. So we directed staff to come back to us with numbers to switch over to LED, and it sounds like they're $380,000.
So it's not just switching bulbs, it's switching poles.
It sounds like Mr. Dean said we could do just the fixtures for a net savings of like $140, if I was running the math there right.
Their quote, I believe, was 130 per, so it'd be about 260 for the two fields.
Okay.
I would assume that that number would go up slightly for construction next year, because that was a quote I would assume on this year's prices. So maybe 270, 275, give or take. And again, you lose a little bit of the warranty life. And then if we ever had to adjust them, we would do that at their cost.
The only other thing, Troy, the fire department used to help change bulbs, but with their newer, heavier trucks, they can't. So we're sort of limited on maintenance as well.
Because they'll sink in the grass.
Yeah.
Can we just put some 2x6s out there?
The lights have become, it needs dealt with at some point.
I wasn't aware of anything with the lights.
This is two fields. Hypothetically, could we phase one field? Could we do it over 2 years, or do you do one this year, one next year?
And it is not half and half, if I remember right. I'd have to pull up the.
How could they share
If
poles?
you give me just a moment, I have it pretty handy here.
What's the expected lifespan of the lights?
The ones we have, or the ones we're talking about getting?
Lights in general?
The old nickel I don't even, yeah.
As far as the bulbs, not sure how long they last. We replaced 2 bulbs and then they immediately went out on us. So it's unpredictable, kind of on the wiring also side of things. And then LED, the ones that we did replace, those, none of them are out right now on Field 3. And we replaced those how many years ago? 3? 4, I don't remember. But, so those have lasted, we haven't had to replace any of those.
It's a lot of cost. That's all I'm saying. It's a lot of cost.
Mr. Chair, the pricing for one field would be 2.25. The pricing for both is $380, and those are 2022 prices.
In theory,
Figure 25 years on lights.
I would
at
think
most.
25 to 30 on the LEDs.
It's a lot of money. We got to make sure that we're
Yeah.
keeping that in mind when we're looking at those programs then too.
Daytime only, so.
Well, I'm not saying that, and we should have lights, but we should be figuring out how to put that back into that. If that's what they're used for, if they're used specifically for those programs, then we should be trying to figure out how to
Right.
cover those costs.
This is one of those where it should have been in the capital budget 25 years ago, piece by piece by piece.
You guys are doing a great job of finding those items.
Right.
so given the one field price, I guess, if we decide later on, we would have some flexibility, I think. So I don't know if we want to change the number. That's my thought.
Well, I think we can change. My thought is concessions, lockers, restroom, parking lot resurfacing. I don't know why we'd resurface that parking lot when we have the potential of a skate park going in there and taking up some of that space.
It's already out.
We took it out.
Oh,
So the column on the right is what's not in there.
Oh, I
This was
see.
our original.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
okay.
So I guess my question would be, did you want to delay the JCs, the concessions for both Memorial and JCs at this point, knowing that the master plan is in the works and just kind of delaying those a year? Or are you wanting to leave something in there with it to be determined? Depending on how the ARPA discussion goes
To
as a
be honest with
priority?
you, I think the J.C.'s warming house concession, with the master planning that we have for that park, could wait until we have a rink there and actually need the warming house feature of it.
Didn't we buy the rink though?
Yeah, we,
Remember,
Just bought
we
the
bought
boards,
the
yeah.
rink for that park. Remember, like that really good deal we found, or we found, Paul? So we'll probably need the warming house there sooner.
Yeah.
like we won't have it this winter either way, I guess.
No, you're right. We wouldn't have this winter, but we'd have it in 23.
So what I'm hearing then is that this is probably a good plan at this point, and change within the dollar amounts as needed for the future couple months.
Yeah, just real fast.
Yeah.
Does anyone see anything in here that they're not seeing that they feel should be in there? Can always be removed, but is there something in here you're not seeing that you think should be in there? Because this would be the time to add that. It can always be removed.
I think the Memorial Park phase, the next phase of Memorial Park, but, I mean, if we include that on the ARPA plan, then we don't really need it in this, but I'd like to see that park get done.
The other thing too is that, just a reminder that the council has been moving towards trying not to have things pop up year of. So one of the things that they've really been focusing on is they don't want to see things popping up the year that you're trying to get them paid for. So if that's the case, and if the memorial thing is something that we really were looking for, we should be seeing that. It should be reflective in these numbers. So I know that most of this, what I'm saying, is kind of counterintuitive to that, but at the same time, now would be the time to bring it up, because otherwise you're pushing yourself back even another year.
And Mr. Chair, not to complicate it a little bit more, but in like option 6, I believe it was, and I'll cover it a little bit in the maintenance updates, but the fishing pier at Kiwanis, as we know, it's in pretty rough shape. The ramp is in rough shape, and the conversations with the DNR from Troy has been the DNR is going to be kind of hands off at this point. They'll offer assistance and guidance, but they've kind of washed their hands of that. So a potential permanent fix could be something that would be looked at. The dollar amount that I have there is based off of the dollar amount that we're putting into the river outlook, the Overlook, over at the landing trailhead. I think that more of a permanent structure out there would be more, a little bit more durable. So that is where that number comes up from. But that is something to consider as well. I haven't covered it yet. But.
Is fishing going to be permitted from the outlook or the Overlook?
Well, he's talking about
I understand that, but we're basing the pricing based off of another Overlook.
was my understanding, no.
Okay.
It's quite a ways up there, isn't it? To fish off them? The Overlook? Is that what you're asking?
I'm just wondering, if we're basing the numbers off of it, is that something that we're currently going to be allowing fishing to be taking place from?
It was more in the idea of a cantilever structure overhang, excuse me, hanging over the river a little bit, so that way you could fish out to the river, but it's not actually floating in the river. So it would look similar to the one at the Overlook. It'd be a cantilever structure. So that's where that number comes from. It would need some refinement. But obviously it was very early, and I just wanted to have a placeholder in there. We would want to vet that through the park board on what they would want that fishing pier and the permanent fishing pier to look like. But it is something we're working on with the maintenance crew right now, but something to think about too for the future is that the DNR is not going to offer their assistance much anymore on that.
I just have a couple thoughts here, real quick, because the master planning is not complete. So I feel like we're just like waffling on this mostly because we don't have a priority list, we don't have money attached to it and so forth. So my personal leaning here is I see a lot of these things that we could hypothetically wait on, press the pause button, and get one of the larger items that is a pressing issue, the lights, potentially out of the way. We know we have to deal with that at some point right off the bat, and then potentially use our ARPA funds to come back in and bolster up some of the master planning as that develops. Because what I'm really sensing here is we're kind of down to the final hour, and we need to present something to city council. So I think you got a couple of choices here. One, we do just a little bit of quick horse trading here and put something, move a few things around, put it back in front. Or we remove a lot of the capital type items, put the lights in there. That's something that is a new thing that we know, we've discovered that we pretty drastically need. Or we'd make no changes and put this forward and then continue with our master planning and refine in 2023. But if we,
The thing that stands out to me, Katie, is that, did Buffalo Hills get used less this year than previous years?
I would say yes.
So is the parking lot in Buffalo Hills as mandatory as we've thought in the past? I mean, is it still packed there? Is there people parking on the street? Is there?
I think the concern is when the ruts happen in the roundabout, is that it just gets hard to maneuver in there. I thought it was more of just to get that paved, that round area.
it's also removed already also.
I know, but I'm just, do we just add the lights into this?
Just, and then throw out a $900,000 number?
So what if we would remove because what I'm hearing about is that the memorial locker room concession at Mills is kind of part of the master plan, part of a larger scheme. So I'm hearing maybe remove that and add the lights for $380,000.
Just add the lights?
And just push a bigger number in front? I mean, our ask in spring was 977.
It's an option. If I'm hearing the lights are the priority, where I'm hearing that the concession locker room at Mills Field is kind of we don't know yet what we're gonna do with that field or how that's gonna go, or am I misreading? I guess that could also be, but just to move the discussion along, it sounds like we need the warming house at JC's because we already have the rink. The pavilions in Lum Park, that sounds like those are probably gonna be a go, or could those change too with the master plan? So maybe it's, remove the 150, the shelter, maybe it's remove everything but the JC's warming house and add the lights and leave all the things above for equipment.
That's what I think.
What'd you say?
I think we just add the number in and just represent at the number we've already got them coming, and then we can reassess as we work on this.
I think you've done a good job here of showing your willingness to look through some of these items just by simply removing them. The 400,000 is a new item that's coming up. Again, the council isn't really interested in seeing that. However, if it is absolutely a need and that's something that the park board is interested in, there's no reason not to present it to them and at least let them know, hey, this has come up. We need to be looking forward to this, whether or not that happens this year or next year or whatever year, it needs to be looked at. So if that's a priority, I think that's a good thing to pop in there. And you've already shown that you're willing to remove some items here.
So here, adding lights at Memorial for 400,000. What else are we removing? Are we going to remove the 150 at Mills? Leave it?
Yeah, leave it.
Leave everything else? Okay.
And then when you come back the second time and you remove all the items and it's $0, the council is going to say, man, you guys do a great job.
And just to clarify, I believe there's conversation about adding a few $1,000s for the pond hockey equipment.
Oh, yeah.
Is that something that we should include?
Throw it in.
No, I object.
Can we take,
Budget will be very interesting at council level, so we can ask all we want. I'm just saying it might not all be a go.
I think what you've got.
We got Troy Rushmeyer. What are you talking? We got Troy Rushmeyer. Full confidence.
I think just, and I can't speak for the council completely, but you have done a great job as a group of looking through the items, going out multiple years, taking a look. I think the council understands that you're still trying to navigate where that's going to end up. But you're showing on here that you have items you're willing to remove. You're willing to say this isn't quite where we want to be. However, I think it's prudent to ask for money and then reduce, as opposed to if you just come in with that, $547,000, and the council
That's
then
what we're gonna
says,
get.
hey, by the way, they could even say not a chance.
Right.
You're not getting that, and then you're really looking to scramble. So I'm not saying to fluff. I'm simply saying if you know that 400,000 is something, and if you know that the pond hockey equipment is being recommended by your recreation coordinator, I would say that those are not above and beyond something that could be reasonable.
Yep.
Yeah, I would want, I don't know, 5,000 for pond hockey. Like, little kids shouldn't be ice skating in cracked helmets. That feels like a universally popular
I
opinion.
say get rid of the helmets. And they never had them 70 years ago.
That was Troy Rushmeyer, by the way.
Give them all those baseball helmets. They can use those. Yeah, I think add it in there, the 5,000. The other part of it is we very well may find, you know, warehouse, office demo, Pavilion 1, Pavilion 2 aren't something that is gonna be on our priority list for next year.
Correct.
For Lum Park. It might be something else, and that might be, fall into that ARPA fund, priority list, so.
Right. I think we're good.
Yep.
What I hear is that we've added $400,000 to the capital. So the capital request on the summary went from 547,500 to $947,500. Our services was increased by 1,080, by 5% increase. And then we are also increasing our program operating expenses by $5,000 per contract.
Correct.
So that means the ask is going to be $1,905,507, which is a 35.34% increase.
No.
You're requesting $947,000 plus an additional $500 of ARPA funds. But I think that can all kind of play out in the next coming months, is what I'm thinking. It might be that 500,000 ARPA funds or 800 ARPA funds goes for the lights, and then we remove it from the current year capital. Is that a correct statement?
I think it's
Yeah.
definitely a possibility. Again, you know, we'd be further down the path. You know, we stalled our master planning, you know, to really know where we want to be. So, yeah, I mean, I've been laughed at before. So, once. We good? All right, let's move on to the recreation report. Missing something here, aren't I? Any board reports? Anybody?
I have 3 items.
You had 3 items?
Unfortunately, I'll try to be really quick. Last meeting, we had talked about the model of umpires as employees. I don't necessarily want to get into that today, but if we could cover that in September, that would be, I just want to follow up on that while we maybe have the chance to make a change in the off-season.
I did get an answer to that question, that they cannot be, no, how did that go, Connie? They are employees, they cannot not be employees, they would be independent contractors. And Chris had reached out a while ago, and the decision was made that they had to be employees through our attorneys. And I know Katie had done some research on this. I think it was 2018 that the emails went back to. Bottom line is, they cannot be independent contractors.
And I really think like a lot of our umpires don't work for anybody but the municipality of Brainerd. They only ump the games here. And when you're independent contractors, you can't determine the times, you can't set the things, and so you really have to be careful trying to classify somebody as a contractor.
Cool, thank you. Second item, I know there was a lot of maintenance that had to happen from the storms this spring and summer. The Brainerd Northside Association did some cleanup in Gregory and prepared some bushes to be pulled. the day before like a million trees went down in Lum. I know that's taken a lot of time, but I think we should follow through with our community organizations that have spent time, and I don't know when we can get to it, but just want to make sure that's on the radar for sometime this summer.
It is. I did bring that up to Troy as well as Sean with her streets department to kind of tag team and help get those pulled out.
Awesome. And then the third thing, the weed and feed seems to be doing really well this year when we don't have a terrible drought. The south side of Triangle Park is still littered with sandburrs, and that happens to be the part that everyone drives by and sees. And I've had a couple neighbors comment to me that it seems like we still don't care about Triangle Park because it's full of pokey things that get stuck in dogs and people. So I know they're a pernicious weed, but...
Which park did you say? I'm sorry?
Triangle Park.
That's the one that's shaped like a triangle.
Triangles do have pointy corners, you know.
They do. There's even a pointy right on the point. Seems appropriate. Yeah, that was all for me.
Thanks, Andrew. Anyone else?
Nothing to add.
Kara?
I did have one question, if I may. Just could we get a follow-up on some of the storm damage in terms of items, specifically JC's warming house? The one I'm more concerned about is the bleachers at Mill Stadium. Can we just get an update on where we're at with that stuff? Is that insurance? Where is that falling, and what is the completion time for that?
I don't have that detail for you, but I can get that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think now we're at the administrator's report.
Well, now that you just got done talking about budget, one thing is, I'm sure you have read in the paper that the city of Brainerd did come to a settlement with the IAFF firefighters. So we have agreed to a settlement in the amount of $3.9 million, of which $2 million of that will be paid for by insurance, and the other $1.9 million will come from the city itself. Although the council and the firefighters have agreed to the terms of that agreement, the settlement agreement has not yet been written. So attorneys from both sides are working on that, should have that done in 30 to 60 days, at which point that Judge Honest then will have it on her desk to sign. I think the good news is that the lawsuit is behind us. As soon as the judge signs off. But I did want to let you know, just to prepare you, that the city is going to have to come up with $1.9 million, and the council and staff will be working on that in the upcoming months.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'll keep it quick. I just enclosed some pictures because my job is about happiness. And so these are just the champions. I'll have more pictures next park board report. But those are some of the lucky ones. And then fall sports, our current registered teams. Just a quick little blurb there. And then last dance, just kind of a breakdown in case any of you guys want to come and hang out on Saturday. We'll have the co-ed softball tournament, pickleball tournament, still taking registrations for all of these, by the way. Co-ed grass volleyball, skate park, pop-up. That'll be on the basketball court they're going to set up there. They'll be serving free hot dogs, so make sure you swing by. CLC baseball versus Brainerd Bees. And then the disco roller skate, we got the lights in, so that's going to be awesome on the large rink. And then our movie in the park, Grease, in tribute of Olivia Newton-John, will be showing at 8:30 at Mills Field. And then just to save the date for the Great Pumpkin Festival, October 15th, 1 to 4.
Thank you, Katie. Parks maintenance?
I'm not sure, have you had the maintenance report kind of read out, or just the summary is good? Okay, great, because I do have a couple other quick updates. Thank you for that. As you can tell, my voice isn't 100% great. So, the other couple updates is the JC's Park has come a long ways, even from since this was released in the packet. The street department was out this morning setting the relocated swing set, so that got reset today. I believe the new playground is getting assembled, or is getting assembled. Or it's pretty close here on the new playground as well. So that's come a long ways, even since this was released. And then the other update is Kiwanis, the improvement project for that park is slated to start after Labor Day. Just got his schedule from Brado Brothers. He plans to obtain the plumbing permits throughout the next month, but work should get started right after Labor Day. The one concern he does have is the doors, on the lead time for the doors. So he has that stretched out about 15 weeks to get that wrapped up. But most everything else he's got over the next couple months, so we can have most of everything wrapped up. It's the doors he's got to sit on and wait on until about December is what he's got scheduled.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else? Adjourning to 2 weeks.
Can we also adjourn to the council budget meeting?
You're gonna come?
Yes.
Sounds like it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I might fall
Brutal.
down, so.
Better adjourn in case 3 of us are there, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, the council budget meeting and our special planning on the 6th? Yeah.
Does that mean we get to laugh at all 3 of you?
And
6th at 29.
an update.
I'm gonna be like,
Appreciate it.
And
If you guys are all going, then I should probably go.
Mr. Chair, I believe there was one other,
Somebody make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I believe there was one agenda item that Kevin brought up about setting a master planning date. Was
That's
that
the
the
date.
6th?
Oh,
Okay.
6th.
yep, thank you.
I wasn't sure if that was part of the same piece. Okay.
Move to adjourn to the council budget meeting and our master planning session.
Second, Jaeger.
A motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Pose same sign. Meeting adjourned.